How does your podcast make an impact? Maybe this is a really big question that you've never sat down to ask, but I'm going to encourage you to think about it because today we are going to talk all about the ripple effect of podcasting, what that means, what it is, and where this idea came from in the first place. So let's get right to it. Hey everybody, Crystal here today, and I'm excited to talk to you all about the ripple effect of podcasting. Because whenever you think about it, a lot of podcasters get really caught up in the downloads. How many downloads did I get today? How many listeners do I have? And what kind of an impact are the statistics making on the world? And I gotta be really honest with you, while the numbers are really fun to look at and to keep track of month after month, year over year, throughout your podcasting journey, the numbers aren't the thing that actually make a difference in someone else's life. Because someone could listen to your show on a regular basis and that's all they are. They are just a listener. They are just a number that's out there. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is think about your podcast a little bit differently. I want you to think about every single listener that you have and imagine if all of them were in your house. Imagine if, let's say, you had 100 listeners. Can you imagine 100 people in your house? Like, it kind of just gives me the cold sweats thinking about it because I'm like, okay, I gotta clean, I gotta vacuum, I have to shove things into closets to hide everything. Does anybody else clean this way? Okay, good, because that makes me feel better. I'm not the only one that does that, but 100 people in my house, that blows my mind. So that's where I want to encourage you to think about every single listener that you have as an individual person, because that's what they are, okay? I don't want you just thinking about stats and numbers and downloads, because I want you to focus on the bigger picture, which is potentially the ripple effect of podcasting. So I already know some of you are kind of scratching your head thinking, what does that even mean, Crystal? What is this ripple effect of podcasting that you're talking about? So I wanted to give you this analogy of where I came up with this, and that is I grew up in the country. Okay, it was very secluded, very country area, and we lived on 250 acres and there were 3 small lakes on this property. And I just remember always going to the lake early in the morning. I wasn't really a fisherman, but many of the people in my family are. But I love to go down to the water with them and kind of listen to the cicadas and all the different the nature sounds. Those are still very soothing to me. But I remember I would go out with my granddad and we would look at the lake and it was just glass. It looks like pure glass. There was no movement. There were no ripples. There was nothing happening on the surface of the water. And then I would see a dragonfly just kind of barely touch the water with its wings or with its feet or whatever part of the dragonfly body hit the water. And I would see these small ripples coming out. Or maybe I would see a fish come up to the surface to try to eat one of those dragonflies. And then I would see a bird barely touching the surface of the water. And these ripples would come out from wherever they made contact with the water. This is what I want you to think about whenever it comes to the ripple effect of your podcast. I want you to imagine that your podcast is a rock or a pebble or even a boulder that you're going to drop into a lake. And the ripples that come out from wherever your rock lands in the water is the impact your podcast has on your audience. Whether it's a tiny little pebble because you just launched your podcast and you're throwing it out in the water and you see one little ripple, that's okay. We all have to start somewhere, right? Or if you have this massive boulder with all this momentum and a huge platform behind it, maybe your rock lands in the water and has a huge impact. Either way, I want you to imagine that every single ripple that comes out is a listener impacted. And I want you to think of them as someone who is going to share that message with someone else. And I thought, what better way to show this than to actually show this to you? So forgive my drawing skills. I am not an artist by any means. I want to make sure that you can see this here. Okay, so here we have your podcast. And like I said, I don't have very good writing skills either, okay? So this is your podcast getting dropped in that glass lake, and then every ripple that comes out is a listener. And then what if that listener shares it with someone else? Do you see how these ripples get bigger? And then that person shares it with someone else. And that person shares it with someone else. And then that person shares it with someone else. And do you see where I'm going with this? You dropped your podcast into the water, and these are all the people that it's affecting. And over time, the ripples get bigger. Over time, your podcast is going to get bigger. But I want you to think about how your podcast can impact others. Is it a positive message? Are you entertaining people? Are you educating people? Are you teaching them something new? Or are you simply motivating them to be a better person and to show up for their family in a really big way? These are all very important messages that I want you to think about whenever it comes to the ripple effect of podcasting. So I want you to put in the comments below and tell me of a podcast episode. Be very specific with this, okay? I want you to tell me what podcast has changed your life, because I can think of podcast episodes that have absolutely stopped me in my tracks. There's one in particular. I was in my garden, I was picking weeds and doing what I do, listening to a podcast. And this idea just hit me like a freight train during this one podcast episode. And it literally changed the course of how I show up for my podcast, for my YouTube video, for my business, and even for my family. So I want you to tell me in the comments below, share with us a podcast episode that has had this much of an impact on your life. Okay, let's get back to the video. But to paint an even clearer picture for you, I actually wanted to share with you 3 stories from people of my Poddy People community. This is our exclusive podcasting membership community. You can find more information about this below the link in this video. But I wanted to share with you Lori, Carla, and Cheryl's stories, because these 3 women have incredible podcasts that are making an impact, and I cannot wait to see the ripple effect of their shows. So Lori has a podcast for grieving moms. And whenever I think about Lori's podcast and the ripple effect it's going to have on people, I think about her podcast getting dropped in the water, right? Bloop, getting dropped in, and being able to help someone who is grieving the loss of a child. This is what her podcast solely focuses on. And then that ripple effect expanding a little bit whenever someone learns how to cope with this grief and they show up as a better person, maybe a better spouse, maybe a better sister, maybe even a better friend. And then they share that with someone else who is grieving. And it starts to multiply and get bigger and consistently grow, because the impact that that podcast has is going to continue to grow the longer she continues to create content. And then Carla, she has the Joyful Energetic Mama podcast, and it's all about helping moms find their own way of being joyful and energetic. Think about the impact that her podcast could have on the children of these moms that listen to her show, right? This is like an indirect impact that she's having, but it could go on to generationally affect people in this family. And I know these are big, audacious things that we're talking about here, but I think that they need to be talked about, because that's how important the ripple effect of podcasting is. Or we have Cheryl. She has Cheryl's Calmcast, and I love this so much because she helps people that are ridden with anxiety and they are just looking for a little bit of calm in their day. And I think about someone who is just having a really off day. they are listening to her podcast, and then once it's over, they show up to their life better. Maybe they're kinder, maybe they are more patient, or maybe they just love themselves a little bit more after they listen to her show. That is what the ripple effect of podcasting is. It's not just listening to a show and then going on about your day. It's someone listening to your podcast and actually putting into action what you've asked them to do, or maybe you have entertained them and you have just given someone hope who is in a very dark place in their life. So I want you to ask yourself, how is my podcast having a ripple effect? Or if you haven't even launched yet, ask yourself now, before you even get started, how can I instill this value of having a ripple effect on my podcast in a positive light to more people? But that's all I have for you today. I know that this video was a lot different. Usually there's a lot of hands-on training and to-dos and checklists and resources, but I wanted to bring you this idea of the ripple effect of podcasting, because I think if we start to imagine our shows and the actual listeners, right? It's not just numbers and downloads, but think about the people that are actually listening to your podcast and think, how can I affect them in a bigger way so that they keep showing up, but they also keep spreading amazing messages that you are already sharing with your audience? But that's all I have for you today. So remember, hit that subscribe button and hit the thumbs up below this video so you don't miss future podcasting videos we put out every single week. Make sure you check out these other videos right here that are all about podcasting, tools, tips, resources, strategies, anything for podcasting in your online business. But that's all I have for you. Remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.